liberty, and justice for all.
Let us once again remain standing and think about our servicemen and women serving our country. Thank you. You may have a seat. Okay. Welcome to the special Village Board meeting, Wednesday, April 17th at 7 p.m. The next Village Board workshop meeting will be Tuesday, April 30th. The next Village Board meeting will be Monday, May 6th at 7 p.m. I'd like to make a motion. Do I have a motion to open up the continuation of the April 11th, 2019 public hearing to consider the tentative budget for the fiscal year beginning June 1, 2019 and ending May 31, 2020?
Motion.
Motion by Trustee Alpert. Second? Second. Trustee Hagen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This time I'd like to ask Mr. Michael Janito to come up. Mr. Michael Janito is the treasurer of the village.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to bring everybody up to date on where we are with the budget. As you know, since the tentative budget was presented on March 21st, the mayor, the board, and department heads got together to go over a number of line items. We had the public hearing for which he took in public input as well, and we had another public workshop that was held this past Saturday in the afternoon, which was quite well attended, actually, and we had some very good input as well from the public at that meeting. With all of that put together, and with some very fortunate news that we received, part of it was on Friday afternoon from our workers' comp insurance carrier, and the other was just very recently from our health insurance carrier as to their projected rates. To give you a background on that, we expected the workers' comp to be at least the same, if not slightly higher than it was the prior year. We were actually granted an 11% decrease. That's all due to the hard work of the village, its employees, as well as department heads and everybody else involved to keep ourselves safe at work and improve our safety coordination. And I've got to say that everybody did a really well job. And what happens is the carrier looks at that over your history and sees a continuing pattern. As a result, they actually came out with a 2-year offer to us, which we are going to accept. That will lock in the rate for at least 2 years, and in the second year, if we continue to do as well or even better, we will get a further discount. So that was really good news. Likewise, the health insurance, we had estimated 10% based on our historical activity with the health insurance, New York State Health Insurance Plan, and we recently received from them, just in the last few days, an estimate that the higher amount would be 8.3%. So that had a significant impact since health insurance benefits are a major part of our budget. The end result is that with the combination of what we worked on together and what we received from our health insurance and workers' comp insurance carriers, we have a reduction from the tentative budget of $460,000. Likewise, we took the advice of several people in saying that if our health insurance was to rise, to take a look at our contributions from employees. Now, we did take a look at that. Originally, we were just going to increase it because the health insurance was going to increase, but then we took a stronger look at it and saw that the contributions had increased over the prior year, and we did raise that 10%, $17,000. So that's the only revenue that was actually changed in this budget. I know, Mayor, that you had brought up today about the Orange Avenue apartments, which is the Sheldon. And I believe that today you're going to be accepting the letter of credit and a performance bond from them.
Yes.
And I believe that they will be submitting a check for approximately $13,000, is it?
Yes.
For parking spaces, which we can add to this budget as well, because that's an operating revenue offsetting the operating expense of parking. So that's totally appropriate. That's an annual amount that they will be paying. So with that, the bottom line is that our tax rate increase goes down from 13.9% as originally projected to 8.4%. So, congratulations to the board and everyone else that did such a wonderful job in putting together all the suggested changes. And again, we've got a couple more weeks to keep that going. One of the things that I would say is that next Tuesday, I believe we're going to have a meeting.
Yes.
A meeting on the budget again. And at that meeting, I would ask that everyone have their final adjustments in. It will take us some time to enter all those adjustments, proof them, and then, of course, get the document ready for and the resolution ready for the April 30th workshop meeting, where I assume you're going to adopt the budget.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all your hard work. Okay, so that's some rather good news for the board and for the residents in particular. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak now as we open up public comment?
I'll speak.
Please come up to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Jay McMahon, 6 Beechwood Road. You can't raise it over the 2% cap. The property taxes are already the highest in the country here. We can't afford to pay over the 2%. We should be lowering the tax. And now you can't even write this off on your federal taxes. So we have to find another way. There's no way.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, a lot of people are selling, and I'm going to have to sell myself if we raise it. Then what are we going to do next year? Its costs are going to keep going up. You just can't get up.
Good evening. Segueing off of him, I moved here about 5 years ago with my wife. We just had a little one.
What's your address?
Live on Crestwood Drive. We were really excited to start a family here. I can see, no offense taken, I'm a younger generation, and it's sad to see that there's not a lot of support here for my generations. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to come here because we fell in love with the village. Unfortunately, with this 13.9, now possibly 8%, that's still absurd. What he said, second highest in the country, behind Westchester. You're not even looking at California, any of those other states. That's nuts. And I'm sure you guys know the articles about everyone leaving in mass droves out of New York State. Thousands of people, not just from the surrounding counties, but Long Island, here, Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Orange. It's not upstate New York, it's here. And it's because of this. This is nuts. 2% max levy, yeah, I understand, but 8 to 13%, that's crazy. And unfortunately, my wife and I, we decided we're out of here. It's sad, and I hate to do it to the residents because I know we're not the only ones, but we don't have another choice. We're gonna have to move somewhere else. I'm a city worker. I support all city workers. I support what the police agency does here. I support the DPW, everyone that does their efforts, but the budget is out of control, and something needs to be done, because you're not just my generation, you're gonna have other younger people leaving because we can't afford it. And going off of a couple budget things that I saw that was a little disturbing is the Salvation Army. I love what they do, but only $25,000 when they have numerous properties all along the village, including they have a house on our street. $25,000, I can guarantee you some of these people pay $25,000 in property taxes a year, and they have a huge campus. I think they should be able to donate a little more to help offset that.
I believe it's 20,000 actually.
20? Also, code enforcement. I hate to take away jobs from people, but you have 2 code enforcement officers making $24,000 to $25,000. Why can't our cops do that? That's a job for police officers. They can easily take that over and enforce the parking, enforce the commuter parking, ticketing on the streets. That's $50,000 right there, and then you can take away a couple of their code enforcement vehicles. We chip away at a budget like that. I hate for people to lose jobs, but you start slowly chipping away at the budget, it's going to add up. That's all I have to say. It was great living here for 5 years, but we're out of here.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, hi. Trustees, Mayor, my name's Dan Leparco. I live on, excuse me? Yeah, 5 Foxwood Avenue. Let's see, where can I begin? My aunt and uncle eloped at the Suffern Hotel 66 years ago. That's a good start right there. All right, it was a great place. Ed, last meeting we had, you mentioned that our roads were repaired. All I can think about is every time I drive my car, I drive into a pothole. And I think about, no, it's the truth. And I think about our vehicles, Clarky's vehicle, we pay for that. That thing goes into a pothole, it's got to be repaired as well. The roads are falling apart. Honestly, the infrastructure's falling apart. I'm holding this agenda for tonight, and I'm looking at rates for water are going to be raised as well. Nothing goes down. I mean, the Tappan Zee is going to go to $17. I don't know if I want to live here and commute into the city. Talking about commuting into the city, there are a number of people that live here that do commute into the city. The George Washington Bridge is $13 alone. Myself, I take the GW, $13. The Tappan Zee is, for argument's sake, $12. It's over $6 each way. So what is that, $25 a day? You do that 5 days a week? Do that for a month? It's $500, is it not? So add that on top of your burden. Here, that's $6,000 a year, somewhere around there, just for tolls. And that doesn't count parking. It's at least $400 a month to park. I mean, my job may be a little bit different than other people's, but that's what I'm up against. I mean, that's my choice, but it's a big burden to raise our property tax in the village above 2%. That's a hit to people. $50 a month is a hit to people. That's a lot. People work on a monthly budget. They really don't look at the year. They look at the month, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I like to work, on a monthly basis. It's easier for me to do it that way. I don't see ratables coming here at all. Anybody that does business in New York is crazy. I mean, Avon itself, from what I'm reading, is under, as of April 7th, for a stock manipulation. Their stock is under $3 a share. I don't know what they're paying in taxes, but I don't see that. Their biggest purchaser of their goods is Brazil. But I know we have a global economy, but I don't see Avon sticking around. And that will put the village under, completely, totally under. I don't see anything positive here, unfortunately. I was a manager. Most of my career was spent with the state as a manager with a very big financial agency, construction and finance agency, so I get the budgets. I would ask someone if I needed money, I would tell him, go back and get me $50,000. I don't care where you get it, just come back and you gave me $50,000 for the budget. I don't need them to tell me, well, what do you need? You need this, no, you're the department head, you give me 50 grand, that's what I need. So if you go to every department head, you tell them, listen, I need 25 grand from you, and you. I don't care how you get it, but you come back here and you give me that $25,000. And that's the way you want it, that's the way...
Let me just interject here. That's what the process entails, and that's what we have been doing over the course of this process, over the course of the last couple of weeks. So we put together a budget, we go to the department heads, we look at the worksheets, we look at the needs of the department, we look at the salaries, we look at the insurances, we look at everything holistically, and then we do go back to each department and department head and remove funding from the department without restricting the services that are required for that department. And this is the way we develop the budget. And
I understand.
We continue, and we will continue to do that.
Yeah, Ed, I understand that. This is tough times, and tough decisions have to be made. Nothing's going to stay status quo. It seems that we're just going along our merry way. Every year we have the same, we're in the same boat. Every year we're here talking about this. I mean, we have to make some tough decisions. No one wants to see anybody lose a job, but we want to maintain, if we want our village, we have to work hard at maintaining our village.
We need to maintain the village at the same level that what I believe we're accustomed to, and the driver behind running the village is the expenses that we incur through employment, wages, insurances, and I believe that is the main driver that we're looking at here. And to maintain those services that we're all accustomed to, and to keep Suffern, the face of Suffern the way we like to see it, and I'm speaking in generalities here, that we overall like to see it, this is what we experience, and this is the process that we're going through.
Understood.
You're a list that we see, so that you're saying these services, but there are maybe so many that we don't know what they are, or they list.
Well, I'm speaking about services to the village as in your fire department, your street department, your wastewater department, your water department, your police department, your recreation department, your planning and zoning department, your building department. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of departments in the Village of Suffern that need to be funded appropriately to run the village. A gentleman spoke about code enforcement. Code enforcement is very critical, as we all know, in the town of Ramapo. Code enforcement is very critical in the Village of Suffern. That is something that is necessary. Wastewater treatment plant, necessary. We're avoiding a $10 million cost avoidance right now, and this is the work being done behind the scenes that people don't recognize.
That's why I'm asking.
No.
We don't see, we know, and so it's not listed then.
Right. No, it's a legitimate.
That's why I'm saying it be brought forward so we know, instead of just saying you're getting this 40% tax, I guess, I'm not I apologize. But if we don't know what's behind the scenes, you're going to get a lot of angry people.
I understand. I hear you. And during this time, as you said, every year we come before the public, and the public comes out, and a little more and more, a little bit of education, and people will realize the in-depth detail and necessities that we need here in the village. Right. Wastewater treatment. If we talk about wastewater treatment, it's a huge burden to the village on cost. Water, on the other hand, is a revenue stream. So there is a fine balance between providing the services necessary and cutting the unnecessary. And that's what we're here to develop. And this is why we have the public participation. This is why we have the boards working together, trying to reach that fine balance, working with the treasurer and being guided appropriately. And the residents, this is what we need to hear. If you believe that some services or things that you're not aware of should be cut, please feel free to voice that opinion or make recommendations on how to balance the budget at the same time.
Yeah, we need to...
Can I add one thing quickly?
I mean, personally, I would have to sit down and look at the budget.
Can I add one thing? I'm sorry. I want to add one thing for the gentleman in the back. On the website, the tentative budget, line by line, is published. It's a public document, and you're welcome to go on the website and look at it. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. You can come up in a minute. I'm almost done. But that's...
Well, just let me finish my thought, though, if you don't mind. And going to the revenue side, the revenue stream, and searching out ratables, that's what we've been doing also. We've been working closely with the Nevada site to redevelop that Nevada site. That's potentially a big tax influence into the village. That's on the horizon. We got the Sheldon is opening up May 1. They're bringing in, they're occupying May 1.
Understood.
That's additional revenue coming into the village. We have additional businesses that are coming into the village.
I mean, Ed, what we've lost, I don't know if we can make that up.
In Novartis is very hard to make up the loss in Novartis. You're absolutely right. And actually, we didn't have control over what their decision-making policies were.
Right.
You know, I'm just trying to message it to you, to make you aware that these are the things and the strategies that we are presented with every day.
Well, this is why we voted for you guys. We can't sit here and make the budget. We'd have, 100 different opinions. So we rely on you guys to do this work. And if we have something to say, yes, we're going to say it. I don't see the ratables coming, honestly, because of the tax structure, and New York is not open for business.
But the ratables just came in, and I'm sorry to say that, like...
Where, Ed? Tell me.
Right in Novartis, just last month, a ratable came into Novartis.
Besides the kosher facility that's...
Well, it's a ratable, it came into Novartis. It is. The Sheldons are ratable. It's
No, I
coming
understand
into
it.
the village.
Are they paying tax? Novartis paying tax?
Yes.
They are?
Yes.
Is the other facility now that operates out of there, are they paying something?
Yeah, well, they're paying tax, they're paying water, they're paying sewer.
I mean, do we know what that ratable is? I mean, if you told us, Dan, we're getting, $50,000 from these people.
I couldn't tell you
I mean,
how much each ratable brings in. No, I couldn't.
Okay, so we
Rateable on that form that we received,
In taxable revenues, yes.
it would be in that form.
Not individually, no. On all the taxes that we bring in, yes, absolutely.
I mean, I'm relying on you guys, the whole village is relying on you guys to do the right thing, to keep us, a desirable community to live in.
That's what we're trying to
We
achieve.
just had someone come up here, a young man come up here and say, listen, I'm out of here. My family, my new child and wife, we're gone. We put a lot of work into our house and we don't see a future here. And that's what I'm getting from a lot of people. And I turn to them and I say, you know what, I'm saddened by that because I'm retired. I want to see youth coming into the community to keep us healthy. And that's what it takes. It takes that type of turnover.
And just the drivers behind the village taxes, and we have to discuss it all. It's all on the table. I know we're here for the village taxes, but at the same time, the driver between village taxes and school taxes is a huge difference, and associated taxes with the town of Ramapo. We have to take it all into consideration. I hear you. I hear the people in the Village of Suffern. I hear our budget. And this is what we're analyzing.
Eddie, we're suffering in suffering. That's what's happening. Suffering and suffering. But I want to just leave, I just want to leave you with this observation from my own family who's been in New York for nearly 100 years. My family is milk haulers. We hauled milk since the late 20s. And we always got our milk from New York. And we would haul it into the plants, it would be processed, etc. Now we got to go to Vermont to get milk. Why? Because there's no farms in New York. My family can't keep the business that was established over 80 years ago. They're going to sell the business. Even though a majority of our business now is water, if you can believe that. But the milk, now we have to make a trip equivalent to going to Florida just to get the milk. Can you imagine, how do you stay in business? You can't, you have to sell a business. So things have really gone way out. You go upstate New York, you'll see windmills all over the place. Why? Because the farmers, they can't keep the land anymore, Ed. So they have to lease their property. I mean, it's bigger than the Village of Suffern. I mean, my observations and opinions are different. But I want what's best for us, because we like it here.
And we will continue to try to make what's best for the village. That's our goal also. Everyone has to understand, our goal, our investment here is in the Village of Suffern also. It's not an arbitrary decision that we're trying to raise the taxes. At the same time, my biggest investment here is in the Village of Suffern, in my home.
Eddie, my home, $15,000.
Correct. I'm same as me.
$15,000. Are you kidding? That's unconscionable. There's something wrong with that picture. I don't mean to take control here. I'm not. I'm just my opinion. Clark's paying $15,000. Just because he's the police, the chief doesn't mean he's paying less. He's paying.
Right. We all pay the same. We go to the grocery store. You're going to pay the same bill as I pay.
We're all in this together, Ed.
Yes.
So we want to bring it all down for all of us.
Right.
How do we do that?
This is the process that we're going through. We went from 13.9 as of last month, to 8.4, and we, and
Try to get it down
and we are still trying.
Try to get it down further. Don't
Yes. We are not
this 8%.
Right, no, we're not denying that.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. We have until April 30th.
Okay, all right. I want to thank you, members, everyone.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you. Now, let me pull my pockets out. There's nothing left here.
Fuck, it's out.
Good evening, I'm David Gagliano. I own a house on Boulevard, and I'm concerned, like a lot of the other citizens here, about the increase. I do want to thank you for kind of taking the time since the last meeting to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and re-examine the budget and not force through the 14% we saw last week and work to get it down. So
Well, just so
appreciate that.
that was never the idea. The idea is that we have to follow the process, and that's the piece of the pie that we have to understand, that when the tentative budget is presented, that's when we go through it and go through it line by line and look at all the expenditures and the revenue streams. And this is what we've been doing. So this is part of the process. So we're into the process now, into the second public hearing. We had the workshop. We're going to continue with another workshop, but I just wanted to make that.
Well, thank you. You got to forgive me. This is only my third meeting ever that I've
Oh,
attended.
no.
First being last week and Saturdays, but I just had a kind of a follow-up to a question I raised at Saturday's meeting regarding the overtime line item for the police department. And that it counted Saturday for $325,000 worth of our budget.
Correct.
So the PBA agreement says that officers can be compensated either with money or with comp time.
Right.
Is there any way to reduce that overtime expense?
There's two different points to the question, I believe, and Chief, if you can come on up, and this, one would be the reduction in the overtime, and then what would be the second piece of it?
Mayor, I want to just explain, Mayor Board and everybody here and my fellow neighbors here. In regards to overtime, we have 23 people pulling out of an overtime pool of money. That is obviously allocated by law. You have to pay them 8 hours if you're working extra hours or working an extra day. That's just federal law. The comp time, we do give comp time for certain things, we definitely do. The problem with comp time is due to the manpower shortage we've always had. We're down several officers. When the officers use that comp time at time and a half, it creates more overtime. It's just the way it goes in policing. I've checked several different departments in the county this week, and 23 officers pull out of our overtime budget. Last year, we put in for much more. We approved for 230, because that is not a realistic range for the size of our agency. Stony Point Police Department, I spoke to the chief today. Stony Point has the same amount of officers pulling out of it, and they have a $400,000 budget, and they anticipate probably breaking it. Piermont has 7 officers in their overtime pool, and they have a $160,000 budget, which they'll go over as well. So we are definitely controlled. We use our part-time officers more probably than anybody else to help us on details, like the Christmas parade. I think we had 7. Every part-timer we have, we brought them in. Your point is well taken, but it's totally understandable. But I do put in every year for much more than that amount that we had, based on the fact of, also, and I'll give you an example this past year. We got hit a little bit more this past year due to the fact we're down officers, but I had 2 officers that were seriously injured during a violent domestic where a man was trying to kill his wife. And one was still out injured. I got him back light duty on duty with policy with the PBA, which the village agreed upon, and the second officer came back after 6 months. They were very seriously injured. That was unpredictable. Just would be a natural catastrophe, a weather incident, God forbid an officer's in an accident, God forbid a shooting incident. Unfortunately, our job is so unpredictable. I can only predict part of it. And every police chief, we have meetings once a month in Rockland County. As a Police Chiefs Association, we are all in the same boat. You can look at the past several years and change it off of that, but it's totally unpredictable, part of it, based on the needs of that that are going to come up that are unforeseen and the intangible incidents that are definitely going to happen, just no matter how bad you get them. Last year, I got it really hard due to those two officers being out as long as it was.
And we always like to budget accordingly, as noted in the budget, so we don't run into a deficit problem, where we run out of the overtime funding, and where do we draw that from?
So is there any way to offset the full-time officer routines with auxiliary officers and kind of lower that even a little bit?
No, I understand totally, and that's what we use. The part-time officers are much cheaper to use because of the fact that hourly don't receive benefits. That's pretty much what I do. The problem with auxiliaries, we have an auxiliary force, but they're very limited what they can do because of the training and the status on the police officers, peace officer. Those are some issues we ran into when we had them.
They can only carry handcuffs, they can't carry...
Exactly, and even the ones we had weren't even sworn. The way we did it with the insurance was they weren't even allocated to handcuff people. If there was an incident, we would have to come in. They would basically use us to stick in the street for directing traffic. That's a great question. It's a great question.
We would like to...
Why are police officers sleeping in parking lots? And don't tell me it's not happening.
Okay, if there's a police officer sleeping in a parking lot, I would expect a call from the public. I've never received one. That's the first I've heard of it. Honestly, I have officers out there, and if they're sleeping, I would hope you would call me and let me know. I'd love to.
They park in the back of the parking lot with their lights on and headed out, but they're in that car for hours. Not moving, not anything, just sitting.
Well, you got to understand also, when an officer does paperwork, there are certain places they're going to park more than others for their safety. And I teach you want to park in a spot where you have good visibility around the whole car. I'm not saying it's happened here, but officers are targets. It's nationally, we know that. You're going to park where you feel protected. If they're sleeping or we see them sleeping, that would obviously be an issue. I assure you, but please, if it does happen, I ask you to call us, please.
Clark.
Someone else asked me, so I apologize.
Do you guys have overtime cap for police officers?
We do not, no.
I think that would possibly help with the budget if you had overtime cap for an officer.
The only
That would help improve with the part-time 7 officers you have, so they can help balance it out.
The only issue...
In summertime, the details...
The only issue we'd have with capping it is due to the amount of officers we have and being down to different details. It would be tough to cap it because I'd have to fill it with somebody. Part-time officers by law can only work 39 hours every 2 weeks. So we plug them in, they're all working those hours. But it's difficult to make it go past that because then we get sanctioned by the county, which I'll be quite honest with you, I have been sanctioned. Not in a bill, I've just had them go over on incidents when I was short, and they did notify us that we can't do it.
I guess, Chief, my question is, how are these officers or bosses making overtime? It's not just the details because we don't have...
No, it's manpower. It's
all the time, we don't have a lot of overextended calls that we're getting constantly all the time. So I'm just trying to figure out, the public wants to know too, where...
It's a very, very simple question. 90% of my overtime goes to manpower shortages due to vacations, sick time, personal time, officers out injured. I'd say, honestly, Lieutenant, you do the schedule 90% probably? A good 90% of it. Total legitimate question. The only time for details, I'll be honest, our details don't cost us much at all because I really do utilize the part-timers. For example, Sacred Heart has the procession on Friday for Good Friday. I have 2 or 3 part-time officers coming in through 6, so I don't have to keep over 3 officers.
One more for you.
Of course.
We fall into the town ramp. If we're short on manpower, why can't the town ramp please help cover everything?
You wouldn't bring another agency in just like any agency would. Don't get me wrong. I work very well with them. I talk to the chief of Ramapo on a daily basis. Personal friend of mine, as well as the officers and administrators. They would come in for anything just like we would go in and we do the Hillburn, Sloatsburg, Montebello, Mount Morton, and help them out. We do it all the time. But you wouldn't pull another police department to cover your agency based on knowledge of the community and honestly based on the fact that you have contracts with your officers as well that are our responsibility is the Village of Suffern.
I actually spoke to the chief of Ramapo Police Department today also in regards to the same thing that Chief Osborne is speaking about, not about them coming in to offset the overtime, but in accordance with emergency situations, with help needed, with anything else, that we do have that unilateral relationship that we're able to work together, and they have a great working relationship, and we do appreciate that about the town of Ramapo and their police department, which is an excellent police department, same as the Suffern Police Department. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
And just to take it a step on, in a major emergency, which we've had and which has gone on in the county, we have something we call a Signal 170. A Signal 1 County is a police chiefs association with the municipalities agreement where we all send two or three officers to that scene, whether it's Clarkstown, Piermont, Suffern, so we do that. And then we do back each other up. Ramapo, us and Ramapo do work well together, so.
That's great, thank you.
Anything else, please? I just didn't know before I said that. Yes, Richard.
I know in some of the upstate communities, and there are circumstances may be different, but state police and sheriff's department address that in some places.
The sheriff's department also comes in instead of the state police. The state police in Rockland are basically zoned for the highways. Orange County, they cover the town of Tuxedo after midnight, and they cover the town of Monroe 24/7. But they're the local police up there. But honestly, good to that call we had in where the officers were injured, state police came up with the way that was so bad to help us out. And the sheriff's department will not come in and patrol a municipality unless it's for it to back up. They'll drive around to cover county property, but if we ask them, like if I had the street fitter, if I needed assistance, they would have came and helped me out. Okay. Please, I'm here if anything else comes up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, your question's very good. Thank you.
I have just one more, and it's one more question. It's an even more difficult one than the overtime question. Last time there was comparison to the town of Ramapo and the town of Mawa as far as their tax levels and our tax levels, and both of those towns cover an area of like 60 square miles apiece, and we're only 2 square miles. Their populations are a lot bigger than ours. And this is, again, Chief, forgive me, this is like not an easy thing for me to ask, and I want to do it in the most respectful way. So, is there any way to re-examine the size of our police force to consider a possible reduction in the number of officers and still be able to maintain the same level of service? If we were to remove even like 5-6 officers at a salary of $150,000, that's almost a 7-8% reduction in this tax burden. Well, I think it should only be considered if we could still maintain the same level of operation, if it's within the PBA regulations, if we could still kind of, I don't know, still provide the same level of service. And again, I'm very uncomfortable asking this, so I apologize. Because you got to maintain the same workflow, you got your requirements.
Yes.
Well, currently, we have 22 full-time officers. With reducing it by 5, you're down to 17 officers. I don't think you would be able to maintain that same level of service on the minimum manning requirement.
So the town of Ramapo, I believe, has about 40 officers.
How many?
Is that about 40 officers?
About 120.
Mawa department has about...
I don't...
About 50.
Okay.
So we cover 7% of the area that Mawa covers, yet we have a force that's a little over half the size of theirs. So I understand our response time is fantastic, but again, you said nothing's off the table, so we should consider this as a possibility, and not something that's done off the cuff, but can we consider it as something to discuss for the next 1 to 2 years, offering...
That's a great idea.
Retirement and reassignment for some officers?
I think we also realize the difference. Being in the village, we have a lot of people come back. It's not the size, it's the amount of population.
Sure.
And we also have a business district, and we also cover hospital. There's just, we have train stations, just a lot of things here that, to be honest with business district, we haven't break that down. But if we weren't able to run offices 24/7, we probably wouldn't have to break that down. There's a lot of things that occur we probably have to give up. That we would just take care of. And I don't mean to get discouraged away, just that we're very compact in the amount of offices that we have. But the population is pretty big in the village. Our census is showing about 11,000. I know for a fact we're much more than that. Guaranteed, it's in there.
Understood, but the top crime, according to the FBI statistics, and you correct me on this, the top crimes facing our community are larceny, burglary, and auto theft. If you just look at the highest instances of crime, and and you got better stats than I do, but that seems like it's a lot more of preventative measures that the public can take to kind of reduce those numbers and kind of...
And if I just answer real quick, and I do not appreciate what you said, I understand your concern, Tony. I live for also, I live for a resident. Our family goes back 3 Civil War days in Suffolk. So, the reality is, I take it as a sign that we don't have those incidents, is because of the proactivity, the amount of officers in response time. Because there's no doubt about it, there's something called geographical diffusion of benefit, which basically deals with when a community around you, like ours, we have a low crime rate. All the crime rates are going to spread along this town's levels, just like the college was. But if we start losing that, the rest of the area gets affected, the whole area goes. And I think that as we make a lot of arrests, we have high presence. And I do believe that downtown, we have an offset to sign that. 40 hours a week in the evening, it's all he does. He takes care of so many issues which we don't, the public wouldn't see, but if you didn't stop them, you would see it. You might have been robbed, you break into violent crime. But he takes care of them and knows every single person that goes through that. There's probably, but I look at it as, that's why we don't have it in a police department.
Understood, but is it something at least we can look at for the next couple years as a potential to change, look at shifts, look at, I know you're already doing this all the time.
No, of course, I think that's, I told you talk all the time, and Lieutenant John and I have been president for years. We're willing to work with the board on anything that's going to make public safety, public safer, and it's also going to do work in a cost-effective way. Well, like I said, schedules, and certain public traction. How would I come up with the village and the PD, or how would I have some money?
Part of that was that I know that in the past that we looked at 12-hour shifts, trying to reduce the overtime, trying to scale back the manpower, but those things are negotiable in the contract. But as you said, we can, continue to study that and look at it.
In 2016, the town of Mahwah commissioned a study of their police department to kind of analyze the call rates, and you know what I'm talking. You can speak to it better than I am, obviously. But I think the recommendation in there ended up resulting in a recommendation to reduce some of the staff there. So is it something worth doing, bringing in a consultant just to analyze this or other parts of our budget?
Based on population, which I understand is we're probably a little low where we should be. Part-time officers help that, but I part-time officers need to be low. I believe in the last week, we looked at a while ago, there's a certain amount of officers per resident, but that's not kind of business that everything else. So that we're trying to make a week good.
I think, speaking to that point, I don't think it just pertains to the police department, although the police department is one of the driving forces of the budget. I think it pertains to all the departments, to analyze each department individually, look at the requirements that are really necessary, the manning requirements, and even going down into the salary structure itself and analyzing each value. Each position has a value that's attached to it for staffing purposes, manpower requirement, and the needs and necessities. I think you bring out a very valid point, and that's something that we will explore.
Okay, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to add something to that, just as something to think about. The chief mentioned several times, at least 4 or 5 times in his speech there, that coverage in the downtown area is perhaps an issue that takes a lot of attention. Is that correct? That you have a lot of... Right, but, so I wonder, what I'm saying is I wonder if there are issues in the downtown area and if they're essentially receiving more police services in the downtown area, I wonder if there should be any surcharge on properties in the downtown area that receive, to offset for the regular homeowners. In other words, I'm saying for the businesses, if there's like an issue.
I don't think you can apply a surcharge to certain areas of the village for policing. The police department's here to keep the entire village safe. You know, I mean, there's dedication to the downtown area with Officer Venturini, I believe, who was there every evening, because that's the highest frequented part of the village in the business district.
It's costing a lot of money for the residents, but the majority of the residents are not benefiting from it directly.
We are directly and indirectly by keeping the crime rate low, keeping the stats down. You're not having that crime spread throughout the village. That goes to 101 in community policing and policing itself.
My name is Bob Mobeck. I live up in Foxwood, and I had just 3 suggestions for the board and 1 comment about what we just discussed with the police department. When I looked at the budget, I saw the same thing everybody else did, and that something was, wow, a lot of money. But would you rather have good coverage for a premium, or would you rather have the run-of-the-mill cops you see upstate New York? I would rather have somebody that is worthwhile, on the beat, in the cars, on the phone, protecting us so that when we have a need, somebody comes busting through your front door, you're going to get a response in seconds, not in 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
Correct.
Right?
I believe that also. That's why the Village of Suffern has that response rate, and the village residents, there's no one here that will deny that to the Village of Suffern Police Department.
Well, I know the way this guy thinks, and
right.
I'm with him.
Thank you. That's great.
It's a lot of money, but I think it's worthwhile. There are my other comments deal with how we can compensate for this 8.4%. I don't know how everybody, I'm pretty sure I know how everybody in the room thinks, but 8.4% is still a hell of an increase, all right? I don't believe that we have to accept last year and the year before we got into this problem, we got into that problem. Is this a zero-based budget?
I think you could speak to the points of the budgeting practices. Is it a zero-based budgeting practice, or is it a practice from year to year?
To explain what a zero-based budget is, that's where you start with absolutely nothing for every line, and you tell the departments before you get any money in that line, you have to justify every amount that you're asking for. We do not use zero-based budgeting. We do use a budget practice where we do look at what the prior spending was in the years, and we see whether that spending is necessary. I can tell you from being the treasurer here that the expenses or expenditures going through our budget, people aren't padding budgets or purposely buying things they don't have to buy. In fact, it's kind of on the opposite end of things. Most departments, if they don't have to buy something, won't buy it even though they had the money in the budget. You'll see at the end of the year, in many cases, what we thought we needed isn't in fact what we needed. And then we go to the next year, we'll look at that spending pattern, and we'll say, well, maybe that can be reduced this year. So I'm sorry?
What happens to the surplus at the year end?
That surplus becomes part of your fund balance, if you will. It's like if you made more money than you spent during the year, it ends up in your bank account. That's what happens with the village. I think I explained it in a prior meeting that just 3 years ago, we had no money in the bank account. No money. In fact, we were at a point where we were not going to be able to pay our employees or our vendors. And that led to some very serious action that had to be taken. But not to revisit that, but we've slowly been able to build up that bank account again. And in preparing for that, part of it was the painful increases in taxes that we have. The mayor had mentioned that the drivers, if you can look at where the drivers are, the money that's being spent the most on, it is personnel and benefits. That's 75% of our budget. And to be honest with you, I think the entire board would love to see this come down to the tax cap or below. I don't think anybody up there would want it to be above it. The problem is that if you look at the numbers that are required to get there, there's no doubt in my mind you have to have significant layoffs. And then it's a question of the services you're going to receive, whether that's police. Our firefighters don't get paid, so they'll still be there. But, you know, other people, whether it be public works, you know, whether it's picking up your garbage or cleaning the streets, whatever it may be. I mean, but that's the action that would have to be taken. And I have to tell you, I've been through that in my career. I've seen that happen, where a government didn't want to go beyond a certain point and they laid off employees. And sometimes public safety employees paid police and firefighters. And trust me, it's a very painful exercise to do. And sometimes you have, when people say they want something cut, there was an experience here in the Village of Suffern before I got here, where they cut out the leaf collection. You know, you bring your leaves to the curb and the village picks them up, and they say, well, we can save, they don't even know how much money it was, but we can save so much money, just have your leaves taken away by yourself, in other words, get rid of them yourself, or have your landscaper do it. And the budget just went into effect, and in the fall, people screamed at Village Hall saying, what do you mean you're not picking up my leaves anymore? We need that to be done. And I've seen that in other municipalities too. Sometimes you get used to a service that's there, and you like it. It does have a cost to it. It's not to say that people are purposely trying to increase the prices to get there. But the Village of Suffern is a full-service village. You know, you have a full-time police department, full-time garbage, recreation, public works. We even have a water and sewer plant, you know, that they don't have in other places. So we could secede from everybody else if that was allowed and operate perfectly fine as our own entity.
That's a beginning.
That would be a lovely beginning.
It's a beginning.
Unfortunately, the state doesn't look favorably upon somebody becoming a city again. But, yeah. So, anyhow, I hope that answers that question for you.
I spent many years with Mercedes-Benz, and I was in charge of an $11 million budget. Probably peanuts to this town, but it was an amount that I was responsible for. And one of the things we did was it was demanded of the managers that they start with a zero-based budget to a certain point. I mean, you just don't keep adding 20% or 10% on last year's number, but you justify. What we had to do, I had to go to 7 regions in the country and actually what we call grill the department heads. Here's what we find. Why is this so high? Let the department heads determine why it's so high. Maybe it's a perfectly legitimate reason, but at least find it out. The only other suggestion I have was some of the vendors that come into the town and maybe do some construction work or electrical work or plumbing work. Maybe the people who make the approval process should be led by somebody who is also a plumber. The idea being that if you have your car fixed, you're going to just stand on the corner and say, anybody want to fix my car? No, you want to get somebody who's a mechanic. This is what it needs, and this is what it should cost. Maybe, I'm just saying this maybe, I don't know. I'm not picking on anybody. All I'm saying is, as a suggestion, to look under the rocks and find out, are we really in the right place on all these terms? It's a big job.
And we are going to continue that process as we've been. Yes.
We have a lot of people in this town that are very, very disgusted with the fact that we're going to be paying more taxes on top of already a high amount. I have a house in Florida that's probably 20% bigger than the one here, and I pay $3,600 a year for taxes.
In Florida.
In Florida, right. Okay.
I'm sorry, I just can't hear.
It was at the town called Ormond Beach. It's not a depressed area, but they have a reasonable budget. Maybe they don't have all the services that we do, but for sure they're not paying $12,000, $15,000 a year for taxes. It's very difficult to pay these taxes when you have a fixed income. A lot of people here are retired. You just can't pick these dollars out of your hat, you know.
Right. I hear you.
I'm telling you probably what you already know, but I just want you to hear it again.
No, it's great to hear you, that's why we welcome the feedback, but going back, just to make it clear that, grilling the department heads or turning over the rocks, that's what we are doing, that's what we have been doing. As we stated earlier, the driver is mostly in benefits, salary, health care, Social Security, retirement benefits.
There's a lot of rocks, I understand that.
Right.
You're absolutely right. I'm just asking that we, as a group, maybe, or another workshop that you have.
We are going to schedule another workshop, yes.
There's a lot of detail in there that we don't know about.
Correct.
You do, but we don't. This man does. He understands where everything comes from and where everything goes. It's very difficult for us to say, well, I don't think you should do that, you should do this.
Right.
But maybe what you need in this organization is somebody who is able to take charge of a particular subject, be it road construction, be it fixing the sewers, I don't know. I'm just picking them out of the air. But we definitely have to come to reality. Seriously.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead. And the radios at the Girard, the senior dining facility, where are we looking to do that for? Is that up to us? Is that up to the town around? Is that up to the state of New York? Or is that a joint venture? How do we bring someone in to fill that void?
We work closely with the Rockland Economic Development Corporation and the IDC, the Industrial Development Agency, and they try to attract ratables. They work with owners of properties and try to attract ratables to certain, say in a Nevada site, maybe it's a processing plant. So they know processes, maybe it's in pharmaceuticals or whatever it may be. They target that piece of property to those corporations that are looking to relocate maybe into this area. But there is a process in place. It's not with the village.
Okay, so there's an HPE spot for $500,000 in economic development. You have a visa for your family, you invest $500,000. That's what, I think it's H5E. I think that's an unholy food, but you have a foreign entity that invests in economic development. How do we attract that? I want people with money to come here and invest. I want to go beyond our borders to bring some life that nice parcel of land. I mean, I don't see why that can't be done. Here in New York, I don't see it happening.
Well, it does happen. I mean, once again, it's behind the scenes. It's because you're not, like the IDC works with all of these corporations. I don't know about overseas, but I'll say throughout New York to attract businesses here into Rockland County. So they work within the county and try to attract business into these, into pieces that come for sale, pieces that are up for lease. That's what they do. When they get a lead, they call the village or they call the town. Would you be interested in this type of development or redevelopment? What are the benefits? What benefits are they giving to the developer? What's the benefit to the village? Of course, the tax rateable, the water and the sewer usage. These are things that are taken into consideration.
I just gave you an idea on
If I could add one more point, the Novartis property is a privately owned piece of land. It is up to that owner of property to have willingness to negotiate and accept tenants into its property.
I spoke directly to the representatives of Novartis today. I mean, I spoke to the IDC during the week. I spoke to the REDC during the week also. I'm trying to attract, working with them to see what's out there. It's there. We are doing it.
I mean, that's a big deal for us.
Absolutely.
That's really a big deal for us. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Hi, my name's Sarah Horn. I own at 3 Cross Street, and I live on Yorkshire Drive, the house that had the giant ice skating rink in front of it all winter long. Thank you, Village Board, for all of your work. I do have a question looking at the budget that was on the website. When you see a salary increase of 11.5%, almost $650,000, is that raises or is that creation of new jobs? Why such a high increase, 11.5%, under your budget line item for salary and wages?
That goes to speak to contractual raises and benefits, I believe? Yes.
So that's
Michael could answer that question more clearly.
contractual raises of 11%. I want a job in the village.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at some of the raises, if it was due to a contract that hadn't been settled in 3 years, the amounts that were in there were the rates from last year, were the rates as they were, for instance, the police budget. You'll see an increase there. It may look like they're getting 11% raises. The reality is they ended their contract in May of 2016. That's when it expired. It wasn't settled until this fiscal year. So what started at the beginning of this fiscal year, which you're looking at, is the rates that they were actually by contract getting at the end of 2016. And then when they settled the contract, there's rates for the increases compounded for 2017, 18, and 19, and then 2020, which is this budget. So that's why you're seeing that 11%. It's actually 2.25, 2.5, 2.5, and 2 3/4.
Yeah, but why did we wait till now to add all those together? Why
Well-
are we done every little money to the side?
The reason...
Is that public safety? Is that the public safety?
Yes.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That there's another line item over here, salaries and wages, that goes from 5.5 to 6.4 to 11.5. It's not the public safety increase. There's another line item increase in that.
Which...
I don't know what focus.
Okay, no, it's all right.
It was not under public safety.
Do you see a page number on your, when you look at your phone, do you see a page number
As long
there?
as you give it back, you can have it.
Thank you. I promise you that.
Yeah, the other reason why somebody...
Yeah, it's on page 9, left side, page 9.
14.2, that wasn't what I was questioning. I was questioning if they go off page 9. The 11.5%
Let me see.
under salaries and wages.
Okay, so that's salaries and wages. That's for the entire village with the exception of water and sewer. In other words, that's everybody, the police, the public works, that's everybody's gross salaries and wages. Now, here, let me just show you.
This is public safety, that's 14.2.
Well,
This is everyone combined.
Yeah, there's two different
but-
presentations of the compensation numbers. So one page that you're looking at shows public safety separate. But the page,
But public safety is not just salaries, that's everything for public safety. It's a different way of combining the numbers, so you can see it by the department or division. Here, for example, in the detail pages of the budget, you'll see where the salaries go from one to another, and actually probably the best page to see the comparison are in the back where we have a schedule of salaries and wages. Now, for the most part, you'll see sometimes a wage doesn't even change, like the treasurer. But in other cases, where it does change, you're going to see that that's either because they just had, as the police did, a contract settlement. And why didn't we put in for it every year? Because what we don't want to show every year is tipping our hand as to how much we have. In other words, we would have to hide it in the budget somewhere as a compounded increase, and pretty soon it will become apparent to anybody negotiating a salary that money is being set aside. The other reason why you might see an increase, even if somebody didn't have an annual percentage raise, people who are first hired go through a series of steps before, and within those steps, like in the CSEA, there's an increase from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3. That's been there for a very long time, and that's how the contracts work. So.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
excuse me, Mike?
Oh, The CSEA contract expired in May of 2017, so that's 2 years plus this 2020 year. The dispatchers really consist of about 4 full-timers, expired in May of 2018.
But if the other union contract gets negotiated next year, would there be a retroactive pay like we saw this year?
There'll be retroactive pay, but I can tell you that the dispatchers, being such a small unit, would have a de minimis effect. In terms of the CSEA, there's more people there, but they're not at the same salary levels as the police department is, and they all go on their own separate negotiations, so to speak. So what gets involved in the negotiations yet to be seen, but the bottom line is they're back 3 years and the dispatcher's back 2.
Excuse me.
Significant increase next year.
I wouldn't say significant. There may be an increase next year. I don't know if it would be significant. It depends on what's settled in the contract.
Why does it have to increase every single year? I mean, when I worked in the city, we had to sub up a lot of zeros.
Well, that's a matter of negotiation, which is really the purview of the board and the negotiating bodies like the CSEA and the PBA. So I understand what you're saying. I've seen that myself, but...
And I still have to do the same work, whether I got a 0, whether I got a 1. So I don't understand why it has to be an increase every single year.
Again, it's a matter of how they negotiate or what's negotiated in a contract.
Somebody who negotiates contracts a little better. Sorry. Because and not everybody doesn't get a raise every year. And you have a job, you should be thankful, you've got benefits, and sometimes you got to suffer. And that is the reality of the world we live in.
And we
I think for support of everybody. If everybody took a little decrease, we would not be here.
Exactly the point. You guys don't have a solid budget. You guys don't have a raise. You guys need the extra time, correct?
Oh, no, we actually, when we first came on the board, I know we took a 10% cut. We took a 10% pay cut.
Any increase next year?
No, there is no increase. It's due,
You're telling me across the board, you're going to take that increase, why can't everybody take that?
it's because it's contractual obligations. You have to negotiate the contracts. That's the way.
We'll negotiate the contract.
Yeah.
There's a lot of forced planning if you went more realistic, you're going to have taxes. We know they're going to increase, but do this drastic increase.
As I said, we're continuing this process, and we will continue. And we hear the public. We hear, and we're taking those recommendations into consideration.
I understand the process, but as it lack of poor planning is not our responsibility. That's why you guys are here. To do it all in one fell swoop, say that's why we have a happy way that we went 14% down to 8.4. That's still a massive increase. If you did it gradually, you get a lot less pushback. Like, if you stay with the 2%, you go 2, then you have your 8%. But to do it with this much, especially with this past tax year, where everyone feels it, and especially in New York, and in our happy states, it's not the average income is $85,000 per resident or so. $85,000. That's not fair.
Jim Genatino, this can go on like this forever. This tax increase is too high. Everybody agrees, like when it was 13.9. They've made significant progress. They're willing to go back to the well. I don't hear, everybody says New York, New York, New York. Who's the biggest culprit of why we pay what we pay in New York? Governor Andrew Cuomo, who says we have to stay to 2%, and he just keeps throwing money everywhere. It's nice to pick on the local people who have to live with his edicts, and we pay it all.
The local people get picked on, Jim. We're the ones paying taxes.
We're all paying taxes.
Can you remind us how much you negotiated for the PDA increases while you were mayor?
It was 4% for 4 years. Right.
So
And do you know what that cost at that point?
I don't.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I eliminated the lieutenant's position that paid for almost the whole contract.
All right, let's have the back and forth.
What my challenge is, you guys go back to it, and I challenge all the department heads to go into their discretionary funds and try to cut 5%.
That's what our plan is. That's a good plan. Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Dan.
Echo Bravo 5 is the visa program.
Echo Bravo 5.
That's the visa program. So $1 million was $500,000. It has to employ 10 American citizens. It's called, you guys run the Green Card. It's economic development. We should really be looking very hard at this property, and we should be looking at way outside of our area to get investors in here. That's how we have, because we're in a critical mass. I know that this is dumb. If we can accomplish that area and get an economic development in there, it takes place where areas have a low unemployment rate or there's a development and stuff like that. But if they employ 10 Americans,
Well, I'll bring that to their attention. I just want to make the public aware also that we work with the college and Startup New York programs also, providing tax benefits to developers.
I retired from a very large agency in New York, bond agency. I get the whole thing. Everything's going to come due someday. It's very easy to issue bonds. The way that I see now for the village is to these properties as a way to get the rateables here. The budget we have is not sustainable, and it's going to go up every year. Dan said it right here. That budget's going to go up every year, or maybe at a cap. But there's no going back. Nothing goes down. Everything's going to come due at some point in time. But that's the point I just wanted to make. I think we should be looking at that type of investment in the community from the outside, where someone will invest. Now, I'm not talking local, because they don't have the money to do this. I'm talking about outside, that has some big dollars.
No, I fully understand, and like I said, just so the public knows that we work with the IDC, and I didn't know about the Echo Bravo 5. I'll inquire about that. Going to the other parcel, and a big parcel of land is the town of Rampo owns the quarry, which is not on the tax rolls. We need the town of Rampo to sell that piece and develop that piece, responsibly develop and pertain to the zoning requirements there also. But these are the things that we have to do.
That's something I think we should focus on as well as our
I met with the town of Rampo this week to speak to those points. So I never said I would never approve development up there. No.
That's my 2 cents.
Housing, maybe zoning, maybe not changing zone, maybe I said something like that, but zoning, if you pertain to the zone requirements for anywhere in the village, we're here to protect the zoning. We're not into down zoning development. We're here to protect the environment. We're here to protect the taxpayer. We're here to protect the water. These are the things that we have to look at globally. Everything overall. It's just not do this and do that. We have to look at it in all.
How do we stop the hemorrhaging of the houses that are coming off the tax base?
Such as?
Residential homes that only have been purchased over the last few years that no longer pay tax. Let's say it's turned into it's the Salvation Army, where it's the Skiing community now has on Camp Live, they have their yeshiva. How do we prevent, but how do we keep the rateable? How do we keep these homes paying taxes or some sort of tax? I even think the church should pay taxes.
that's a whole nother issue. That's our looper, that's religious land use, that's, we don't control those federal requirements that are in place, or the state requirements. We just don't. You can't prevent someone from building something in the zone that it's approved for. We need strict code enforcement. We need to conform to zoning and code, and that's why we need to keep our zoning and code officers in place, along with our fire inspector, to ensure that the health and safety and welfare of every person that lives in this village or owns a home or lives in an apartment is safe. There are just many facets to running this village, and I hear you. I'm not dismissing anything anyone is saying, but we have to take into consideration everything. And we continue to try. Mr. Russo.
No Show Joe, On Air Circle. Good evening, board. Good evening, village. As many of you are aware, I was in this seat. Steve, Paul, welcome to it, and I'm happy I'm not sitting up there right now because I was here last week, and that was an attack that I did not want to be a part of. It was nice sitting over here. I have faith in you guys to come to a conclusion and make this village sustainable. All right. As you guys all know, I'm in the fire department. I just ran out for a fire call right now. With people writing on Facebook and even here tonight saying that they're going to be putting the for sale sign on, people are not knocking on the door to join the fire department anymore. It's not like the way it was 20, 30 years ago. We may get a couple of new guys coming in, young kids, and they go off to college or they get a job or they can't afford to stay here. You have adults that are joining. They don't have the time to do all the required training because they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to live here in the village. So you need to do something to keep this place sustainable, or you're going to lose the fire department too. I'm not saying next year or anything like that, but in the next 10, 15 years, you may have a paid fire department or contracting it out. So that's something to think about. So just do something to make this place sustainable and keep people being able to afford to live here. That's all I want.
Michael Curley, 84 Orange Avenue, Suffern, New York. Not that this is relevant, but the reason why there's less milk up New York, because Chobane, one of the major yogurt places, buying all the milk out. That's why they're going outside to get the milk, all right? The big Greek business.
Chobani.
Okay.
Chobani.
They bought all the milk upstate. That's what's going on. The Chobane, however you say it, all right? But I know you're going to keep trying, as they're saying, you're going to keep trying. If you get it down, that's great. But I just want to, like, you were talking about Novartis and whatnot there. Novartis was, and I said this at the last meeting, but Novartis was sold for about $30 million. And it's about, I think there's approximately 4 partners involved on it, okay? Right now, they are working on their initial building, getting different permits and paying their taxes, okay? Suffern lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, actually, not just in real estate taxes, but in water and sewer over the last few years. It was in phases, okay? These gentlemen now are attempting to, they hired a Cushman Wakefield, a national agency, a rental, to rent those properties. So they're in the works right now. They're actually working with the planning department, who Jim is in charge of that in the village here, and they're trying to get things going there. I just don't want a total doom and gloom, and I respect the young man, even though I think I look younger than him, okay? It's a joke. It's a joke, all right? I respect them, but I don't want it all doom and gloom for Suffern, all right? Because you do have other projects coming online. Now, they haven't come officially, but on the Novartis property, they will attempt to put more properties in there, but it'll be commercial, industrial, industrial properties back there, okay? They're not allowed to put housing there. It'll be commercial, and the more multiple buildings down there, without hurting the village, the town, and I think will be helpful. You also, on Washington Avenue, have approval already for 60 new, I guess they're high-end apartments, not counting the Sheldon on Lafayette Avenue, okay? So that project should be worked on. It already went in front of the Village Planning Department, and that board already. That one should be coming on, hopefully this year. They'll start working, and by next year, we should get more real estate taxes on that, and water and sewer. We also have 48 units on top of Lafayette Avenue, next to the telephone company there, that has already got approval, and hopefully they'll get moving with that. The sooner that they can all get going, the sooner we can get tax rolls on that, okay? We also have, as you said, the quarry. The town of Ramapo is in dire need. They're proxy, they came out with that, they're $8 million below in their budget. They're more. So Ramapo has a lot of land that they're looking to sell. So they're looking to sell that now, and then if we get that, that'll take a little more time, in my opinion. But when that goes online, that could be another 2 years. But at the same time, we have an obligation as a community to protect what uses go in there. So even though it's the town of Ramapo owns the land, it's within the confines of the Village of Suffern, so we control the zoning, which is a good thing there, okay? The other thing, and I appreciate it, like the gentleman here was talking about how many officers and this and that, okay? I think has to do with Ramapo's, I love Ramapo, Mawa Police Department, I'm sorry, because I get a lot of come in, I do their holiday party for them, the PBA, okay? But their density on their outside houses are different than Suffern's density. So how many officers, that's a different question. But I will say this, imagine that there's an accident on Lafayette Avenue and a cop is there, okay? Then imagine that there's an accident up closer to Hillburn, okay? Now imagine there's that gentleman who lives in Boulevard. He mentioned he lived in Boulevard, okay? Now at the same time, think about that it's your wife or husband that had a heart attack. Or it's that it's your friend or your neighbor that fell off the roof, okay? I would rather have that third cop on duty. I would rather pay that extra for that, because Suffern doesn't have its own EMS or ambulance service here. We use Ramapo, we're further away. So on a medical call in the Village of Suffern, your first responder is the Suffern Police Department, okay? So, and I'll bring it to light a different factor, okay? We have other Leo Leiden buildings and we have things. What we could consider doing too, ambulances units are money makers, and only if there's a research done, it's a money maker. Right now, we want an ambulance that goes to Ramapo. There was so much money in there, the town of Ramapo was taking that extra money and put it in their budget and making money. But again, I hope the young man there, okay, who looks about my age, all right, I hope only reconsiders. I hope you find a way to get it down a little bit, because there are a lot of good things here, okay, and I think you care about this village, and you work hard, okay? And you've had tough decisions to make, and maybe a couple more you have to make to help these people. But there is hope. Thank you. And one more thing, up till they pass the budget, Curly's Corner will give a 10% discount to everyone in the village, okay?
Thank you.
Perfect example of okay? I'm not just saying, well, but that's...
Okay. Thank you.
I want you to take...
Okay. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Yes.
Offset the overtime if you hired another officer, or a couple officers, all part-time, where they did those contracts, so they did that license to go full-time, so you're not paying that additional funding for overtime. I hate to say it, I don't want the cops to lose out on overtime either, but that's the overall budget. By hiring a couple more police officers on teams, so you have it on every shift. That's all these entities
Yeah, just to give you a quick history, I think the board's aware of this, and other mayors, I think the rest of the board members, I had a conversation just past week with most of them. Back there, a few years back, we were, not a few, I say about 10 years back, we were 29 officers, full-time. Gradually chipped away, 28, 27, we're down to 22. So yeah, the overtime, there's definitely a direct correlation between overtime and officers. When I first started here, the overtime was minimal. Guys were fighting when somebody called in sick to take it. Go, I'll take it because there was none there. But that's when we had a lot more officers. So to answer your question, I think in simple terms, yes, 100% absolutely, yes. So, of course.
Salary of a starting officer figured out.
My apologies, I just couldn't hear you, Sam.
How is the salary of a starting officer figured out? Is that a line item in your budget? Because I know we have older, more senior police force, and I understand their salaries are higher, and they've been on the force a long time. Starting officers that are just starting out, how is their base salary?
Sarah, that's all negotiated at the PBA, Sarah, and I will tell you this. Jim, maybe when Jim was mayor, it was a few years back, we actually reduced the salary of the starting officers. Sarah, in Rockland County, we are under the auspices of the Rockland County Police Act. There's 2 counties in New York State that have it, Rockland and Westchester, which means there's 5 steps. We have 5 steps in 5 years to get the top salary. So Sarah, that's pretty much negotiated. It was reduced, and I'm going to send to Mayor Giannatino, maybe in that era, and at that point, if we get a 2% raise, the starting salary goes up 2%. Does that pretty much answer?
Yeah, it does. It's just negotiated by that.
Yeah, by the PBA, correct, by the union, correct, yes.
I want to try to work.
Okay.
Okay, is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Any of the trustees like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to the public that, yeah, we're going to continue to work at this process. I personally appreciate everybody coming out here 6 days ago, and also Saturday at the workshop, and then tonight. I think your input and your feedback has been very valuable. I've been up here about 4.5 months. I'm still learning a lot, but I've come to a lot of meetings over the years, and haven't been many people here. And I think as a result of all your efforts and your input, we have a longer list of adjustments that were accomplished from 6 days ago than I've ever seen, and that is, we've had a lot of people, raise concerns, stress the fact that it's getting very expensive to live here, stress the fact that we can't deduct these taxes anymore, and I think it's just been terrific input. We've had some new approaches on how we skin this cat. I personally came up with a different approach, and I got mixed reviews on it, but the net effect is by getting more fresh looks at this, we're going to come up with more fresh ideas. And so we encourage you guys to continue to give us input, send us emails, give phone calls, get up at the podium. I have a question of clarity for Tuesday. Mike, you said that we wanted to put in our final changes by Tuesday. Are we going to spend Tuesday going through those and trying to, or are we submitting and then Tuesday, we're going to have the end result? I just want to get clarity on that, because I'd like us to continue as a group working at this.
Yeah, my recommendation would be that any suggested changes can come through as you come up with them. And then, of course, the board we can share that all by email. Doesn't, phone calls, email, doesn't really matter. But just to get the idea of what changes we all agreed upon, and then we can put those in, so that when Tuesday comes along, we can can summarize those changes, much as I summarized the changes for you tonight, to date, that were done. So that's what I would suggest. The idea is this, is that there's going to be a certain amount of time we're going to need from the time that everybody's agreed that these are the changes to be made, and then finally publishing the document and having it available on the 30th for adoption. So Tuesday, that's why we say Tuesday, to have like the final changes in.
Okay, so we're not going to spend Tuesday's meeting drilling through some more opportunities. You want all those opportunities submitted before then?
I think if everybody has them in, and, we'll share them all and say, this is what we have, and this is the impact. I think that's sufficient, so when Tuesday comes, we can spend that valuable time just going over those changes. Since you already would be familiar with them, it would be just summarizing them at that point.
Okay.
I have a question, Mike. You had mentioned at the beginning that there was very little change on the revenue side, but I wanted to inquire, one thing that was an issue we brought up on Saturday was the New York State DOT payment. Was that sussed out?
Right. I was waiting for Charles to... Charles, did you ever come across that contract for the snow and ice DOT that was mentioned?
That was approved as far as
I had sent you an email requesting a copy of the contract and the amounts. Okay, so if you would, just check the emails and follow up on that if you would.
And
yeah, the question was whether or not the snow and ice is a contract with a guaranteed amount each year and how much is guaranteed for next year. So if I have the documentation for that, we'll put it in the budget.
Right. Also, I believe Kathy Mills had something about a number that was a discrepancy, and we saw an email to...
Yeah, the majority of that number, Kathy, was the allocation in and out between the recreation and the recreation center. That was the salaries and honestly, it didn't seem to make much sense allocating salaries between recreation in among itself, so that's really the majority of that adjustment.
I'm sorry, Mike, some of these items that are negotiated, do we negotiate them as a lump sum, or is it not to exceed? And is that how some of these line items are broken down? Let's say we just use the village attorney as an example. Let's say he's $40,000 a year. That's a negotiated number we have.
Are you talking about salaries, or is it...
No, his contract. Is not to exceed, is not to exceed 40,000. I'm just trying to set up an example of how we do this. So we get the terms, okay, we got 3 terms. This is what, what's your bid, what's your number on this? So he's going to give you a number, and our contract is going to stipulate that we're not to exceed $40,000. Unless we negotiate a lump sum item, then we're going to go back as well and get more. We're going to negotiate, right? I'm used to line items like I'm used to line items. So everything's negotiable depending on how that line item is set up. So to answer the question, not to exceed were they lump sum, and can we go revisit them?
Well, every line item, as you can imagine, is different. I mean, if you're talking about a salary, that's typically something that's contracted. So that's an agreement with the... I'm sorry.
Yeah, so using the village attorney, this is an example.
No offense taken.
We have him as a line item, is he not a line item? In the budget?
Yes, yes.
Is that line item stipulated how it is acquired? Is it a lump sum that he bills for? Does he bill for? He bills for his...
The current agreement with the village attorney, which is a retainer agreement, is for a set sum amount every month for a 12-month period.
Every month?
It's a monthly amount for a 12-month period.
We will exhaust that negotiated number. We're going to exhaust that number every year. Basically, we're drawing on a set number.
I'm sorry, I don't understand how you say we're going to exhaust that number.
So, Mike, we're going to have to negotiate $50,000. So he's going to bill you for, let's say, $5,000 a month. He's gonna build it. So that $50,000 line item is gonna be exhausted.
No, it's not that way. No. He has there is a retainer agreement with his law firm. In that retainer agreement, it's so much per month. It's a fixed amount per month. And that's it. It's like a salary. It's a fixed amount per month, and then it goes for 12 months. That's what they're going to get paid. Yeah. Right. Right. But when you talk about line items, you can have a line item for utilities. We're going to do our estimate on that. We don't have a guaranteed amount that we're going to have to pay for utilities.
Access point on the telephone pole built out, villages, you know? There's $1.90, whatever we truck, go to the park. Okay?
I'm sorry, I don't get what you're understanding.
No, I'm talking about Cambridge. They access every in the village.
And we get a franchise agreement that they pay us for that, yeah.
Is that increasing or?
It's in the budget. The franchise agreement, we have two franchise agreements, one with Verizon, one with Altice, formerly Cablevision. Those amounts are based on cable subscribers and the revenues that they bring from that cable subscription. So we get a set amount based on the fees that are charged to the cable subscribers. We get a certain amount of that money. Yeah.
So, I mean, we have, no, it's some way to manage. Every penny is dollars. So a telephone pole, that particular pole over that house, that cable, is paying a fee. Each person on that pole is paying a fee. Regardless.
No, we do get franchise fees. We get gross utility receipt tax, which is paid by Orange, typically Orange and Rockland is the major one. Mortgage tax, anytime that somebody finances or refinances a home. So those are major revenues that do come in. We get a portion of the sales tax that the county shares with the local governments within the county.
I'm just curious, you know, about the line items and the NTE type line items and lump sum items and the negotiated yearly retainer is negotiated every year.
Can I add something to this? Dan, I just want to add something to this, and if it's okay with the mayor that I mention this. So previously, the village had a staff attorney that was paid a certain salary.
Well, we're only using it as an example.
Okay, but I'm using this example, okay? So that person obviously had a salary, so they're making a weekly paycheck or biweekly or whatever the case may be, plus benefits. Currently, with the current arrangement with the legal law firm, there's an arrangement, as mentioned, with a retainer, but every 3 months there's a review of that, and, you know, if we go under or over, there is an arrangement to deal with that. So in other words, it's based on a certain number of hours. So in theory, it's a cost savings relative to the original arrangement.
From my background, again, I come out of some big budgets, and work with big budgets, again, looking at it, but I just encourage you again with the E5s and ratings. I can't do any more than just grandstanding. I do have some background, so I do understand all the fine things in the budget. I really do get it. You have to look at it.
Will do, Dan. Thank you.
I can't say any other way out.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? I would like to... Okay, at this time...
I just want to finish, I just finished my comment. So, folks, I'm with you. I mean, we've made some progress, but it's not good enough. We're going to continue to work on this. I asked the board we're not going to save ourselves out of this problem. We need to drive ratables, as a lot of people have mentioned, and we need to look at other streams of revenue. I urge the board, we talked We talked a lot Saturday. We started with revenue items. We went through some things. I brought up some things that were on my list. We had a lot of good dialogue, but I ask again that we look at the level of conservatism that we're having with some of the revenue assumptions. I understand, and we certainly go with Mike's recommendation because he's got the most experience, but we do show over the last 3 years that versus what we're budgeting right now in revenue is about $400,000 here. And in addition to that, we have some things that are one-time. There's a couple of one-time payments that are hitting us right around the time of the budget year. And also, we have a big one-time expense in there for retro pay on the police. I ask us to look again to see if there's a comfort level with taking those one-time incoming revenues that are coming right around the same time and offsetting that and paying that retro, recognizing it this year, and that right off the top that on its own is about 1.2% off of our number. But I ask you to look at the revenue assumptions again, and everybody, as you come into Tuesday's meeting, think about if you're comfortable with making some assumptions and putting these back in the budget, because we're almost $500,000 shy of what we've been averaging over the last few years when you consider some of the one-timers that we have coming in that we know are coming in. Thanks.
All right, at this time, I just really want to close, we're going to continue the discussion, but I would like to close the public hearing, the public comment section of the meeting. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Sure. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you come to...
Just for the one time. And in actuality, if you vote to override the general municipal law to exceed the tax cap, and you happen to come in below the tax cap, you rescind the override. So it's only annually.
We have, in every prior year of this board, voted to override the tax cap and then rescinded it when we came in under budget.
Well, we haven't rescinded it every year. We've voted to go over it.
We voted to exceed the tax cap, and then we have voted to rescind
the tax cap.
If we didn't... When we come in below.
Yes.
When you come in below.
Right, but we haven't come in below every year. I'm just...
No, we didn't say we did.
Oh, all right.
Every time we did, we rescinded the...
Gotcha, correct.
Were they previous years or just past 2 years, not far out?
Well, you honestly, to be fair, you have to go more than 2 or 3 years back, because we were in dire straits. And you don't dig your way out of that without hitting every taxpayer to get out, to try and develop a more fiscally sound budget, which is what does make me a little nervous with Mr. Girard's want for us to be a little less conservative in our revenue assumptions, because it's not as though the money disappears at the end of the year. We have a tremendous amount of bonds that are still out there, leases on vehicles, any and all of which can be used at the end of the year to pay off debt or build our fund balance so that we maintain a stable or positive outlook and look better going forward and be able to have cash reserves. It's the difference between living hand to mouth or not.
The amount rescinded, he went from X and he said, okay, we try to back. So I was curious about what that percentage was. You said percentage, and you tried to back.
Well, because every year, it's standard practice. I know that there was a lot of initial flame throwing on the budget and its rate, but it is the same as it is every year. It's a tentative budget. It's all the wishes and wants of every department head, If they could have everything as they wanted it to be, it would be this. And it's through a series of budget workshop meetings that we drill it down to what is palatable for everyone, makes good, sound fiscal sense, and gets us where we need to be. But in order to do that, you don't know for certain whether or not you're going to meet that tax levy mark that's mandated to us by New York State. So we customarily vote to exceed the tax cap while we undergo the process to its final resolution, which would be at the end of this month. And if we get under, we rescind. If we don't, which is where I think it's going to be this year, I don't see how we can get down that far without seriously compromising the services that are available in this village. And just as we want a fine school board and school budget, you want to have a fine village. We've tried to make certain improvements here that are now coming to fruition, but now we can't make judgments on monies that may come in, businesses that may start. It's too risky.
Agreed. I'm talking about, revenues that we know are coming in and expenses that we know we have right around the start of the tax year. It's not throwing fire to inform, or fanning flames to inform the public and make sure they're aware of where our starting point is. And as I said before, I don't think we would have made this much progress if we didn't have a lot of you folks sharing your concerns, sharing your ideas, coming here, expressing your outrage. I think it's helped us get further along in 6 days than we would have. So I don't think we're fanning any flames. I think it's been constructive dialogue. It's been very helpful listening to all of you. And, we still have to manage this village after the budget is blessed and over wherever we land. And so, your participation and your input, whether you come here or you watch it on YouTube and then have some feedback later, bring your comments, bring your input, because we got to manage this village throughout the year. And, we can take ideas throughout the year and look to implement them if they make sense. So, I'd like to see more of you on a consistent basis, as busy as everybody is, and I understand, but we appreciate the input, at least I certainly do, and so I sincerely thank you for it.
I also want to thank a lot of members of the public who've reached out to us by email that haven't necessarily been at the meetings, or maybe they have, but they've also been sending constructive comments about ideas they have, because we've been looking into those ideas, and many of them have resulted in where we are now, which is a lot better than where we were last week. So I want to thank the public.
Well, let us, okay.
I've been on this board for a couple of years. Many of you might know that. This is the most I've seen people come out, and I'm glad, and I hope you keep doing it. Because there were times when I sat up here and saw 3 people in the audience. Please, come to a meeting. Tell us what you want. Don't just email. Don't just put it on Facebook. If you can, come here. I want to thank you. I want to thank the board for working together. Despite what other people are saying, every member of this board is working together. Thanks for coming out. Thank you. Come back Tuesday night, too.
Okay. So speaking to those points, once again, as part of the annual budget process, the tentative budget is presented to the board that reflects the cost of the historical goods here in the village and the services that we provide, including to the village, including the determined changes in our operating conditions and cost reflective in the upcoming fiscal year. So those are they are the variables and the differences. So a public hearing was held April 11th. A workshop meeting was held on April 13th. A second public hearing is again held tonight. And I am proposing an additional workshop meeting for next week. Therefore, at this time, I am recommending that we close the public hearing, the public portion of this hearing, and we urge the board to continue working together as we all seem to agree with, for Tuesday, April 30th at 7 p.m. I think we spoke about this before. Is the board in agreement with the April 30th? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Hold on, 23rd? Let me just check my calendar.
Looking at my watch, I said, that's not...
April 23rd at 7.
Do we have a motion to...
Just let me finish this, and yes, you can actually, just let me... Hold on, so I just want to confirm that you guys are available. You're good for Tuesday, April 23rd.
So can we have a motion to schedule a special workshop meeting with the board?
Okay, so can I have a motion to schedule a special workshop meeting, April 23rd at 7 p.m.?
Motion.
Motion by trustee Hagen, second by trustee Alpert.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion posted. Okay, so that's going to be our next workshop, budget workshop meeting. Mr. Turco.
Do we have village vehicles that are driven home by certain people? And if we do, what's the furthest distance that we allow a village employee to take our vehicles to their house?
The distance, I'm not aware of a distance requirement on that.
If you work for let's say, anywhere, vehicle that belongs to you, and you take it home, do we know the furthest distance that some people are driving with our vehicles? Just because of gas, insurance, oil?
Right. We take that into consideration. I don't know the distance. No, I do not know the distance. Some of those take-home cars are contractual, and it's in an agreement, so I would have to review the agreement and to be specific to what it says.
Do they go out of the county?
Yes.
So we have people traveling out of Rockland with our vehicles?
Yes.
Our gas and that?
Yes.
So is it possible that maybe those people could drive their vehicles to the county when they come on their shift, and then use the car within the village, and then go back home? Would that be a cost savings? I know it's not a lot.
Well, everything, like we said, as we've been saying, that we're looking at everything, and we continue to review all the practices that we have in place.
I just wanted to know.
Nope, yep. Okay. Okay, so at this time I make somebody make a motion to close the public participation.
It's the public hearing.
Public hearing, I'm sorry.
Completed
there you go.
before April 20th. So
Right.
You're closing the
Public hearing.
Continue to work on the budget outside and after the public hearing.
Correct.
Motion.
Motion by trustee Girard, second.
Second.
Trustee Hertzman. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, so that closes the public hearing, and as I said, April 23rd, 2019, 7 p.m. for another budget workshop meeting, and we'll continue to work on and review the budget.
We have to open the other ones and close them.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. The meeting is not over. I just want to...
It's not over.
You're welcome, man. Thank you.
No.
That's just the water rates and everything are part of it.
It's not over yet.
You can go home, Dan.
You can leave whenever you like, but we're not leaving.
I'll be over for dinner.
So, I need a motion to open the next.
Yeah, I just got to get... Hold on.
Here.
Just put that away.
Kathy.
Okay.
Kathy. Do you have access to a water bottle?
Here, I haven't had mine. You can have, no, you're good.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like
had a cold cut sandwich with
Motion to open up the continuation of the April 11, 2019 public hearing regarding setting of water rates effective June 1st, 2019.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Hagen, do we have a second? Second to open the...
I'll second.
Water rates, Trustee Hertzman, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Mr. Janito, can you just give us a brief update on the setting of the water rates, please?
Yes, Mayor. There will be some minor adjustments to the budget of the Water Department, which will result in a minor reduction in the water rates that were presented, which shows an average of $17 on a home as an increase on the average home water bill. But at any rate, not a major change either way, and there may be more adjustments by the time we get to next week's meeting.
Okay, great. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in regards to the setting of the water rates?
Mike, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear it. What was it, about $17?
Well, our water rates, in the tentative budget, the water rates that were developed under that budget would increase the average home about $17 a year.
A year, okay.
In the water. And with the changes that we've made, there's some slight reduction in that, and you're going to find that with the sewer the same way. And whatever final changes we'll have by next week. But in any event, it's not going to be a material difference from this. And I'll remind the board, too, that these rates can be and should be set with the adoption of the budget, which will be April 30th, and the rates go into effect June 1, but the very first billing that's affected is the one for November of 2019.
Mike, I had one question. So when you say $17, that's on an annual basis or per bill?
On an annual basis for the average home.
And how much use would you say is the average home?
An average home over the course of a year uses between 65 and 70 units of water.
I just wanted to get a ballpark. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in regards to setting of the water rates?
Mike, I know we had a discussion prior about possibly getting a study.
Yes, that's included in the water budget, the money for the study.
Do you know about what... All of those for me? Thank you. Is it coming out of this year's budget or next year's? Yeah. Remind me. About
study.
About how much that study was costing?
Well, we did not get any, we didn't send out an RFP on it. It takes a while to put that together. We're putting in the budget $50,000 for that study.
Okay.
Do we have any source? Is that just an estimate? I mean, do we have any?
It's an estimate. Several years ago, when I worked for White Plains, not that many years ago, about 3 years ago, they had gone out for estimates on their water, a water study for themselves. They're not as complicated as we are because we have a water plant. And they only had a water distribution system with some wells, basically. So, and most of their water was purchased from New York City. Okay. So, basically, that number is reduced from what they had, but it's a ballpark. Of course, we're going to try to get the lowest.
No, I know that. I was just thinking if it's a budget assumption, do we have anything to support it in your experience or?
In my experience, yes, but yes, it's still an estimate, right?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Oh, that's different. Okay. I have a motion to close the public hearing regarding setting of water rates.
Motion.
Motion, Trustee Girard. Second?
Second.
Second, Trustee Alpert. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Don't spill the water over there, Mr. Curley.
No, as a matter of fact, there's a 10% discount at Curly's until the water rates have been adopted.
Is that another on 10% on top of the other 10%?
I thought it was 20%.
20 would even
Do I
be
hear
better,
25?
yeah.
Always taking on for this village, always.
And you always give, thank you. You always do, Mr. Curley, you always do. All right, where are we here? Okay, got a motion to open the public hearing regarding setting of sewer rates effective June 1st, 2019.
Motion.
Motion trustee Hagen, second.
Second.
Second trustee Alpert, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Janito, brief overview, please.
Yes, similar to the water rates, the sewer rate established here would be about $42 increase in the year for an average home. Again, those rates don't have to be adopted until April 30th with the budget. And we don't believe that there's going to be, while there will be a decrease, it won't be significant in terms of any adjustments made to the sewer budget based on discussions with department heads.
Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak in regards to the setting of the sewer rates?
Can you just review, I'm sorry, when the sewer bill comes out?
The water and sewers billed, yeah, they're billed together on one bill, separate amounts for each, and they are billed as of May 1, and they're due by May 31st back to the village, and they're also on November 1 and due by November 30th, so it's twice a year that they're billed.
Is there anyone else that would like to? You're welcome.
And Mike, in that rate study, inclusive of that, we're going to look to see how we bill out some of those multi-units or multi-unit users?
Yes, basically, to answer the question on how we're going to design the RFP for the study, we're going to indicate the kind of meters that are out there, the number of meters that are out, the types of meters, the types of facilities receiving it, whether it's an industrial-type facility or condos and co-ops. Yes, that's been one of the issues that we have been wrestling with. It was brought up at the very first public hearing on the budget. The gentleman mentioned that he was with a condo or co-op association that had a single meter for several units, but because of that, the way the rate structure works now, it kicks into a commercial rate, and so we're looking for that equity among how do you handle that sort of thing. So obviously, the study will include all of that and ensure the most equitable manner by a independent third party in terms of how to bill out for water and sewer, and of course meet our sustainability requirements for maintaining our infrastructure for water and sewer.
Anyone else?
If and when we get this consultant to evaluate this, I presume obviously that won't have any effect on the current billing cycle, but that would be something aimed towards a future billing cycle, like whatever they come up with as a solution to the kind of thing you pointed out there?
Yeah, I mean, once you set the rates for this year, that goes for November 1, 2019, and May 1 of 2020.
I see.
So the rates wouldn't be changed the next time you would change them in either one of those.
Okay, I got it.
The next time you would change it would be in the, with the adoption of new rates next
Just wanted
year.
to understand the time frame.
Right.
Should we get this consultant?
Good. Okay. Motion to close the public hearing regarding setting of sewer rates.
Motion.
Motion trustee Alpert, second.
Second.
Trustee Hertzman, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Okay. I'd like to have a motion to open the continuation of the public hearing from April 11th to consider authorizing a property tax levy in the excess of the limit established in General Municipal Law, Section 3C. Do I have a motion to open the continuation of the public hearing?
Motion.
Motion trustee Hagen. Second. Anyone the second to open up the public hearing?
Second.
Second by trustee Hertzman. All in favor?
Aye.
To open?
To open the public hearing.
Aye.
Aye. Frank? Aye. Mr. Albert? Aye. I'm sorry, there's a little, I guess everybody was studying their documents there. Okay, so we're all in agreement, we're opening up the public hearing. Okay, the continuation. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in regards to the property tax cap levy? Brief overview, Mr. Janito?
Yes, the property tax cap is a law in New York State that is now permanent, that essentially requires a local government to maintain a property tax levy at no more than 2% of the prior year's levy unless there is an override by the village board with 60% affirmative votes of the full village board. That would be 3 of your 5 votes. What the override does is allow you to exceed, when you have a budget where the tax levy is going to exceed the 2% cap, prior to adopting that budget, you must adopt an override. If you don't adopt an override, you either cannot adopt that budget, and if somehow you go about and do adopt it, the money that you would have raised in excess of the 2% must be reserved and not be used in that forthcoming budget, which would in effect put you into a situation where you would have to immediately cut areas that perhaps you didn't intend to cut before. So that's what the 2% cap override is. You don't have to adopt it now. We have always recommended in the past, and NICOM actually, New York Conference of Mayors recommends that you adopt it, even if you think you're going to be over it, but you might be able to come under it, because you can always rescind it. As Trustee Hertzman had mentioned, we've done that in the past. We've adopted it, sometimes it stays, we've adopted it, and sometimes we've rescinded it when we came below the tax cap. Looking at this budget, I can honestly say that I don't see how you would reach that cap without cutting into personnel salaries and benefits significantly in terms of layoffs. But in any event, it's the board's decision on what they want to do. Again, my office would recommend adopting the override, and if we are fortunate enough for some reason by the time our budget gets adopted to be below, we can rescind it.
Okay, great. Anyone from the public? Anyone from the board?
Mike, what is the deadline you think we have in order to make this decision on whether or not to override? How much time do we have?
The absolute deadline is April 30th, just prior to the adoption of the budget.
Okay. Okay. I kind of think that maybe we should, we should continue to use this as an incentive to come up with further suggestions and further proposals on see where we can find some more reductions or increases in revenue. That's not to say that we might not end up overriding it, but I think we owe it to the citizens that have come here, expressed their concerns about an 8% as to not vote on this yet until we have to, as an incentive for us to continue to strive to get down to that 2%.
I don't think anybody on this board needs an incentive by any means. I really don't see any reason to really further delay it. We might as well just get it out of the way. Because the reality is, the likelihood of it happening is very, very slim. It's really to none.
I would disagree, because we came already from 14 to 8, which is quite a big difference in 1 week.
We did put effort into reducing that amount.
And I think if we put equivalent effort, we can go from 8 and reduce it another 6 to 2.
That would require the hard work of a lot of people.
But how would you propose that possibility, Mr. Trustee Albert?
I don't have specifics at this point.
No, I neither do. I'm just saying that We did some extensive work
All of us
on-
have kept our nose to the grindstone on this, and we, collectively have all thrown ideas into the pot, so to speak, to be evaluated.
Oh, yeah, it was thrown into the pot.
And some of them have worked out, and we've reaped the benefits by getting from 14 to 8 in 1 week.
Yes, but you have to be reminded that this is, and I'm glad that you're participating in the process, this is the process. This is the process we followed last year, the year before, and the year before that. This is probably, I'm going into my 4th budget year. This is the process. This is what we do. This happens every year. But we need, if we're going to make these tough decisions, we need to hear them.
Understood, but having said that, if we can adopt what you would like to adopt, it sounds like, there's no reason to adopt it today.
No, absolutely not. I'm not proposing that we adopt the tax cap override today. It's not necessary, but it needs to be it will be needed to be adopted, if I say that right.
It will.
Before we adopt the budget. Right. On the vote.
Understood.
That's all.
By April 30th, is that correct?
Yes.
Michael?
April 30th.
By
The deadline. Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's any benefit to adopting it today.
No.
That's my opinion. I agree with Paul on that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course, because we're going to continue to work on the budget.
But I think, Michael, you wanted to, I just really feel that, to reiterate, that we have to have plans by the next workshop meeting to be able to get,
Oh, yeah, certainly. I would, as I mentioned, like, having all our finals in by next Tuesday at the workshop meeting. And if we aren't there, that's an excellent point at which you might want to adopt the override. One of the reasons why many times they adopt an override earlier than the budget, because you can always rescind it, number one. Number two, if for some reason you just forget, or you forget the protocol and you adopt the budget first and then you go to the override, now you're in a real big problem. So I think that's why NICOM kind of recommends that you go ahead and do it. There's no harm in doing it. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to go over the 2%. You're not forcing yourselves to go over 2%. What you are doing is putting it in perspective and saying, this has to be done before the budget. I can do it as early before the budget as I want to. Because there's not a dollar amount you have to put to it or a percentage amount. So, but yes, next Tuesday, we're going to need everything in pretty much. As I mentioned, and yes, a lot of work was done on the budget to bring it down, but if you start looking at what's left to go down further and understanding that you have to cut out somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000, that's a monumental achievement. But again, as the mayor said, we still work on it, and it doesn't have to be done tonight.
Right. I agree.
We do all understand that this is supposed to be worked on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for finalization Tuesday.
Yes.
That's right, and if we're not able to physically be together any of those days, just encourage everybody to, again, on your suggestions, your proposals, continue to email everyone so we can, we can all have input, and one person's thoughts might stir another, so, just want to, encourage as if we are physically together and continuing to hammering away at it.
You do have my right email address now, right?
It's been reply all, so if anybody's emailed you and I've emailed back, it's been on a reply, so hopefully you're getting it.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right. Okay.
Sorry, Mayor, did you close the public hearing already?
No, I'm about to. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know you guys have worked really hard, and I appreciate it, being a resident and everything, but just to state my opinion, I don't think it should be, like the treasurer said, a drastic cut where you're gonna start cutting into the department's salaries and everything. I don't know how long ago it was, but it's nice to see at least the big garbage truck back when the little guy who's driving around in a little truck trying to empty all the garbage in this little truck. I mean, I personally thought that was ridiculous, you know, so, you know, just from, doing that and being biased, being on the record, you know, on the back, I think, you know, that is very important to the community, and that's another reason why a lot of people move here to see all the activities that we do have here, and they do enjoy, you know, what is actually there, you know, and you know, I personally, as a resident, started doing the evening programs too, which I don't do because I work all day. So at least it's not just, you know, it's really expanded, you know, over the years. But, you know, like I said last week too, between the police department and everybody else, when you call they've been, you know, there to help you. And it's very, rewarding, you know, knowing I'm not happy, you know, that 14 hours down, I mean, do the best we can. And, you know, I'm at least proud to say with Suffern, it's really good, because I work with a guy Ridgewood, and he hardly gets anything. You know, even if it'd be there more for the amount of money that's in Ridgewood, but, you know, do your best. I don't think, you know, try to get it down a little more, but to start going into people's, you know, and cut more and more services, you know, like I said last week, it's going to draw more people even away, so.
You made a valid point that if we start to reduce any services, it's not going to be welcoming to anyone. You know, I mean, we're used to, you know, having our garbage picked up twice a day. You know, do we want, I'm sorry, do we want our roads plowed after the snow fell and is piled up on the road? No, we don't. We want the snow cleared during the storm.
I think they do very well, because I did a lot of fulfillment, and I have a lot of seniors knowing it's a side road, not the basic main highway, and I want to commend them, because there's a lot of seniors that do live on that road, and this winter, hopefully,
but these are the things, and you're hitting the nail on the head, these are the things that the residents, along with the board, have to consider if they go in the direction of service cuts. You're speaking of the seniors, and we all know seniors. I think I'm a senior now. Well, I could join the club, I could say. Do I want to drive on slick roads with ice because of budget reductions, because of cost-saving measures? No. Do I want to have my police force intact? Yes. I mean, do I want my, you know, when we flush the toilet, it goes to the wastewater treatment plant. You turn on the water comes out. You have a water main break, the water department comes out and responds, they pick it. We're down into that range where there may be, or I'm saying there is no more fat to trim to say, do we go to that direction? I don't think so. But we will continue to work.
And I think we should put money during the year so we don't get in the situation of saying, you know, I mean, the other thing, the recyclable, I don't know how much money years back, which I know a few residents talk about, and it kind of went downhill, but I know a few people would like to bring it back, the recyclable committee, having that big flea market down there. I don't know how much the village, you know, got that. But, you know, I'd be willing to pay the village $20 a spot and bring more money.
Stuff? There you go.
You know, but that, you know, I've heard people starting to talk about that they should bring that, you know, back.
Those are good ideas.
They're great ideas, and we're always receptive to ideas, you know. I know, you know, speaking of the flea market, but these are the things that people like in the Village of Suffern. They like the events that we have. You're part of recreation. You've been there for many years now, working and volunteering. So these are the things that are a custom here in the village that people know and love, I would say. But thank you.
Even intend to meet in person again?
I'm sorry?
Do you intend to meet in person
We're going, the board,
in order to work on reduction?
we're meeting Tuesday.
No, I mean before.
Well, I come in, I'm there and I'm in communication all the time,
If we all meet together, it has to be a meeting.
publicly noticed.
Okay?
Well, we're doing that,
I think it's an incentive to get more done. And I also think, although I hate saying this, voting to override the tax cap is a big incentive to get things done.
so you're saying vote to override it, to make that the incentive to reduce the budget?
Yes. I think that's the biggest incentive you can find. It puts the pressure on you guys, which it already is, but it makes it a little more important to sit down and keep hammering down. I don't expect you to find 5 or 6%. I've been there, you know.
Yes.
There's only so much you can find. But this is an incentive to find every dollar you can find. In person and with that over your head.
Well, if I might add, without taking a vote to override the cap, state law says we must come in under 2%. So I think that's a bigger incentive than voting to break the cap and really not having, in my opinion, an incentive.
When I see Andrew Cuomo come in under 2%, I'll worry about his cap, because he just taxed the hell out of this state.
Right now, this whole going back into
Never heard that. Spring Valley told me it's going back in.
Oh, really?
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Where are we? Okay. Like a motion to close the public hearing to consider the authorization of the property tax levy. Trustee Hagen?
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye, motion passes.
So we're now to 7.
Oh, we did that already. 7. Is this it here?
Just the letter.
Oh, no. Is this it? Okay.
It's in, I was told by Mr. James.
Okay, next, I have a resolution accepting the changes made to the 2019-2020 tentative budget as of April 17, 2019, in preparation for the special workshop meeting set for Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019, at 7 p.m. I have a resolution to adopt the changes to the tentative budgets for fiscal year ending May 31st, 2020, whereas Section 5-508 of the Village Law provides that the 2019-2020 budget for fiscal year ending May 31, 2019.
That should say 2020
That should say
there.
2020. For fiscal year, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And must be adopted on or before May 1, 2019.
So let me read the whereas. Whereas Section 5-508 of the Village Law provides that the 2019-2020 budget for fiscal year ending May 31, 2020 must be adopted on or before May 1, 2019. And whereas the 2019-2020 tentative budget was prepared and transmitted by the village treasurer to the village board on March 21, 2019. And whereas a public hearing on the tentative budget, the proposed 2019-2020 water rates, and the proposed 2019-2020 sewer rates were held on April 11th and April 13th. And whereas members of the village board have proposed amendments to the tentative budget, now therefore be it resolved, the Village Board of Trustees, the Village Board of the Village of Suffern does hereby adopt the amendments to the tentative budget.
Should April 13th be April 17th?
We can make it, that was the workshop date,
Oh,
so
okay.
I had that in there for that.
I got it, I understand that. Thank you.
Do I have a motion on that resolution?
Motion.
Motion by trustee Hertzman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, trustee Albert. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Mayor, just a question for the council. Does
Yes.
that require a roll call vote, being that it's adopting amendments to the tentative budget?
Yes.
Roll call vote? Roll call vote, yeah.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Hertzman?
Aye.
Trustee Hagen? Aye. Trustee Albert?
Aye.
Trustee Girard?
Aye.
Aye, and Mayor votes aye.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Janito. Do you have the letter of credit, Rezo?
Yes, I do.
Oh, I have it. I have it. All right. Mr. Magrino, if you may, speak to the points of the Orange Avenue performance bond and letter of credit.
Thank you. Good evening. As you know, the Orange Avenue project has moved along. I forget when it started, but, you know, we started with a zone change and went all the way through, and now we're at the point of issuing a certificate of occupancy. So they've applied for what's called a temporary certificate of occupancy, which is authorized in the village code. The building inspector has been inspecting the project as it's gone along, and he'll do a final inspection. The intention is to issue the temporary certificate of occupancy, I believe, this Friday. In order to do that, there are still some items that are outstanding that couldn't be done due to the weather, pouring of concrete, things of that nature. I believe it's primarily the last level of the parking garage. So in issuing a temporary certificate of occupancy, the building inspector is requiring a performance bond that get posted in the event that they don't finish. And so I've put up on the agenda a resolution for the board to accept that performance bond, which is collateralized by a letter of credit in the amount of $120,000. And this was recommended by the village building inspector, and the village planning board met, thanks to Chairman Giannattino. We had a special meeting earlier this evening, and they've recommended the acceptance of the performance bond to the village board. So, and I have the number was left blank, but Amy, in filling it in, the letter of credit number is S930-60835.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
It's 930.
I'll try to go slow. S as in Sam, 930-60835. And we have the original bond, which is the promise to do what they intend to do, and the original letter of credit. Mr. Janito received that. If the board adopts this resolution, those items will be deposited with the village clerk to hold until such time as it's returned. Any questions?
Is one of those things, are they paving Blovelt?
I spoke to the owner, and they will be paving Blovelt Way, yes, and a portion of Chestnut Street. Spoke to him yesterday.
And we do have a separate performance bond for that already.
Okay.
Right.
To ensure that
not on here. Okay. Thank you.
Is it correct that, I think the mayor said before, May 1st is when they're looking to have residents move in?
That's what I heard. Yeah, I spoke to the developer yesterday, and that's why they want to try to move it along. The other thing, and again, as part of the approval process, they had to do a fee in lieu of recreational land. So it's $138,000. They've delivered a check in that amount. They have to buy parking permits. Again, they've done that, so it's moving forward.
So I have the resolution accepting the Orange Avenue project performance bond and letter of credit for the temporary certificate of occupancy. Do I have a motion? Motion. Trustee Hagen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Magrino. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this evening for this very important budget hearing. We received great input from the residents, from the taxpayers, from the board. I appreciate all the hard work that the board and the department heads, and especially our treasurer, has put into this. Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Hagen, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.